the athletes along the way with some of these things as well. But obviously you can only know what you know at the time. Steph, I'd love to talk to you a little bit about just, I guess, the different sort of service providers along the way. Like, I know that, I would say your coaching, at least, it was probably a little bit different to what the normal sort of athlete would experience. I mean, your father played a huge role in your career, but obviously he was, I would say, like, kind of your coach for majority of the time. I know you did sort of get some coaching from some different, really high level coaches along the way. But do you want to talk to us just a little bit about how you sort of navigated and managed that through the years?
Yeah. Like you said, Papa Na, he was a massive influence on my game. And, he was literally the one that taught me everything and, introduced me to the game and just sort of, really took me from, like, we started at Regency Park. After school, he'd like pick me up, we'd go hit some balls, and he taught me everything I knew. And, it was really tricky, I think, sort of once I hit that like elite level of, you have all these high performance coaches, and Golf Australia was just forming, and it was really tricky for me, honestly, to navigate sort of, what should I do? Do I continue working with my dad and listening, exclusively to my dad, or do I seek other coaching? And, I do say there is a part of me that wonders if I had just sort of listened to my gut and stuck with my dad. I mean, he got me through, he got me to being, the best player, best amateur in Australia, and everything that I accomplished as an amateur. But yeah, and then on the other hand as well, like, what if I had found a really good coach sort of earlier on in my development, where you could have that separation of like dad / coach sort of thing. And obviously dad not being a professional golfer, or it was a little tricky to navigate, especially going through the national program and things like that. Obviously they would encourage me to find a proper golf coach. In saying that though, there are definitely scenarios with top players. I mean, Karrie, her coach was not a professional coach, and she's just accomplished basically absolutely everything you possibly could wish to do. Not putting myself anywhere near that category, but I'm just saying that it's definitely still doable. But yeah, it was tricky for me. Like, obviously also being a teenager, and you just sort of, you want to take the support that you've been given, or take any opportunity that you've been given. And so it was a little tricky, but I think I finally found I personally wanted to learn a bit more like technically. And so my dad couldn't give that to me. And so along with the help of like Golf Australia, and I'd met Ian Triggs through the national program, and I'd worked with him for a few years. He was also coaching Karrie at the time, or helping Karrie out. And so, yeah, that sort of was like my introduction into getting coaching. But yeah, it wasn't until sort of like the back half of my career, where I sort of invested more into like finding a coach and working with a coach. But I always felt comfort, when dad would come out to golf with me, whether it be practice or we just play casual round or going to tournaments together. It was comforting to me because it was, he'd be saying the same thing. And that to me just really like helped, because that gave me confidence that dad was doing just fine. He knew what he was looking at. He has a degree in like physical education and knows so much about the body and movement, just being with his background of martial arts. So that, I think once I found a coach and I was working with them, and I learned a bit more technically, in technical terms, using video camera and lines and learning about plane and whatever and all of that stuff, And then meshing that with what Dad was seeing too, just with his your naked eye, we kind of found a good little combo there. So I finally figured it out.
Yeah, obviously it's that difficult one, having such a good relationship with your dad and him being such a massive part of your golf career. It's kind of like, where do I go? And that's actually a really difficult sort of decision. And, I'm sure that when you were in the national program, probably pushing you towards having a coach, having a technical coach, but sometimes it's got to be kind of what works for the player. And obviously in the end, you found sort of what works for you. I know that in the last few years of playing, you seek some help from Daniel Blackwell as well, who I think was fantastic for you. And when you were, let's say, those last few years playing, because obviously you're only back in the country for, barely a couple of months a year at the end of the year. How does that relationship sort of work in terms of, obviously technology's come a long way now that we can throw a video in, Coach Now or whatever it is, and we can FaceTime and do all of these different things. How did that work for you when you were sort of playing those last couple of years with a coach like Daniel back here in Adelaide?
Yeah, I will say it definitely took a bit of getting used to. You just sort of had to develop new habits and sort of new routines of how you'd go about it. So I do reckon the first sort of year that I was working with Daniel, we did obviously great work while I was home in Australia, and I wasn't the greatest at, sort of sending swing updates, as we called them. And, you sort of would go along with whatever was working. And if you were playing decent, I kind of just stuck with that. And then you sort of reached the point of like, you just kind of tip a little bit too far that way. And, sort of things sort of blow up a little bit. And then, it'd be like emergency, like SOS. But definitely learned, obviously, like you say, through experience. I was like, well, I need to be better and more on top of this and be proactive rather than reactive. So yeah, I just sort of developed this routine basically every like either Monday or Tuesday. Whenever I would get to the event, I would just send a couple of swings at the start of the week. For me, because I just really was still getting used to like having this sort of like coaching relationship and thinking about technique and a bit more than probably than what I was used to. And so I definitely wanted to keep it sort of practice days only and sort of find something that I could work with for the rest of the tournament. And then just sort of, just keep checking in. But it's definitely, it takes a bit of discipline, I would say. But once, like any athlete, you will do anything that's going to help you. So, it sort of, once you got the hang of it, it was kind of like every Monday, Tuesday, send over the swings. He'd send back, his feedback. And and just like you said, technology nowadays, it's just, in an instant, you could FaceTime, have lessons and all of that. So, I think the last couple of years, I actually really started to I could almost say that I liked my swing, which was huge. And so, shout out to Daniel because we did some great work together, and he really, really was a huge part of like me getting back out there in that 2016-17 time. So, it was awesome working with him.
In terms of like working with, let's say, your dad, Ian Triggs, Daniel Blackwell, like I'm sure there was a couple of people sort of just here and there in the middle. Mm-hmm. Let's say even from, when you turn pro to, let's say if you were to go out tomorrow and have a lesson, would you say that the things that you've worked on technically have changed quite a bit over the years, or have they stayed pretty similar, like in terms of the actual things that you're, let's say, working on within your golf swing?
Do I really think it's actually so crazy to think that it's all such similar things. Like we are just built a certain way. We have this like makeup of our body, obviously, and we have certain intricate moves or like we do little different things. Like, you know, there's so many little things that go on in the golf swing. Just, you know, it's a game of inches and even like millimeters of, you know, different angles and whatnot. And so it really is quite funny how I think, gosh, like, you know, I still can't load into my right side. Like, what's happening? I think it's honestly, once you know, like golf coaching, it's just sort of like maintaining the most efficient way your body can move to hit a golf shot that you want to hit. And yeah, for me, that's my experience anyway. I mean, I'm sure some girls have had like, you know, major changes, and maybe they've had an injury where they've had to really like rejig the whole swing and movement patterns. But for me, I feel like it's all been it's nothing like, oh my gosh, I've never done that before. But it could definitely be like, wow, I've never looked at it that way before, or I've never heard it that way before. So yeah, I just think,
just kind of like a different explanation at kind of like the same thing. It's like, okay, we're
100%.
working on the same thing, but how about looking at it this way or that way? Or like, I guess the reason for asking that question is, you know, through my coaching is that, you know, you often have a player that is, let's say, having, you know, and I'm just talking about the everyday golfer, right? Is having consistent lessons. They're working on their game a little bit and maybe playing a couple of times a week, practicing a couple of times. They might have a lesson sort of every 2 to 4 weeks. And, you know, they sort of get to a couple of months in there. They're just like, what? You were telling me that 2 or 3 months ago. And I'm like, you don't, like, there's certain things within our golf swing and our nature and our body, like we just, it's kind of maintaining, you said it before, being sort of proactive instead of reactive. And I always say to, you know, some of the players that I do coach on a regular basis, and I use an app called Coach Now where, you know, I sort of do the analysis of their swing and do a bit of voiceover whilst in the lesson. They can then go back and look at the videos, and I tell them to, you know, if you feel like you're swinging it pretty good, put a video in the app so that we kind of have and I often do it in a lesson if I'm like, this is kind of like our baseline, right? This is our where we want to sort of work our way back to, because we know that this is when you're, you know, golf swing, it's working the best for your body, but it's kind of a bit of a grind sometimes, but it's just working on the same sort of things, and even like some similar things, like basic things within your setup that they can, you know, that compounds to the rest of your golf swing. And okay, all of a sudden that's where this or that or regular. I mean, I wouldn't say I go through any golf lesson without talking about something to do with someone's setup 100%. Position. And, you know, we all want to, you know, players want to work on the, you know, the sexy stuff, the fun stuff that, you know, I'm doing this, I want to come more from the inside. It's kind of like, well, you can't do that from where you're setting up from.
Exactly.
And,
yeah, I will definitely say that. And I think, you know, with my fiance too, just sort of playing a lot of golf with him and his friends over the years, you know, and he's even caught on to it now too. He's like, it's probably, you know, one of his mates is having a rough time, and he'll literally now be like, it's probably something so simple in your setup. Like Steph will look at you and feel like, say something, you know, and it'll be so simple. And I'm like, that's honestly because, like you've said, you can't achieve all these other things in the swing if you're not set up. Give yourself the best chance, at least, you know. Sometimes I'm like, what? Like, why is your club, like, it's not even in the ball is not even in the center of the club. What are you doing here? Do you want to hit the middle of the club or not? You know, just simple things like this. It's pretty funny. Yeah, for, you know, for all your listeners that, you know, that are sort of maybe feel a little stuck or just sort of monotonous in their lessons and whatnot, but truly, like, that's golf. You think about how long it takes to make an actual change, and like lifetimes, you know, like there's, for us, you know, once you get to a certain level, almost every single time it's something with your alignment or your grip just sneaks over a little bit. And, you know, like we were saying, everything, there's just so many different parts to the golf swing that you just can't, you know, you need to start off well from the get-go.
Absolutely. So, get the basics right.
Yeah, sometimes your lessons can be boring, but it's, it's all worth it. Like if you want to maintain or get better, it's going to be incremental once you reach a certain level. And yeah, sometimes it's, timing. It's just, yeah, there's just so many factors to
Absolutely.
it.
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
feel like some of the best lessons I have, certainly from getting the most out of it, is when I don't really have to say much and I'm just kind of watching them hit and kind of work it out. And, it's almost just like giving a tiny bit of feedback, but, you're actually
Yeah.
doing a really good job.
Yeah.
Let's, just because you go, right, you've done that. Okay, let's go on to the next thing. That's quite often when you lose what you've just had. It's kind of like, well, no, we need to just keep on this track and make this feel, because it's easy to do it in practice when there's no pressure, and I've just hit 57 irons in a row and this is my 51st. It's easy. But when we get out onto, to then be able to do it out on the golf course, to be able to do it in competition, to be able to do it on the 18th hole when, you just have to get it on the green in 2 putts for your best score ever. Like all of a sudden that little bit of added pressure, that's where just like that compounding effect of just, the drilling it in to the body.
100%.
And this is my feel, is that,
it's key. Like, I think, it's just so important, like in those times where you're hitting these shots and you feel like, oh, I've got it. Like, let's move on to the next thing. It's really try and like feel it out. Tell me what you're feeling. Tell me, teach yourself almost, because you want to be able to, what do I like to call it? Like
a bit,
the words left me, but
you got to kind of be able to.
when your computer used to like
self-diagnose, no?
Yeah.
I get what you mean. I get what you mean, but it's kind of like you've got to be able to, and this is when quite often, if I'm giving a lesson, it's kind of like I just said, we sort of do a bit of a voiceover and it's like, oh, can you just write me some notes sort of thing? And it's like, well, I can, but why don't you write some notes down in your words? Because I might say, okay, this, but you might go, oh yeah, my right shoulder feels like it's doing this. And when you're out practicing, you're going to remember that. You're not going to remember what I said. And I mean, I remember back to, my golf coach probably never looked at it, but I remember having lessons, and after my lesson, I would write like an A4 page full of stuff that we'd worked on in a lesson. Now, we might have only worked on one thing, but that's just me kind of documenting it. And I actually, funnily enough, I found it the other day, and I text, so it was Gareth Jones. I texted him and said, like, look at this. And, I used to send it to him, and whether or not he would actually read it or not, but it's kind of like in my words, and you go back through it and you kind of go, oh yeah, that's right. That was kind of the feel I had when, might be working on exactly what he said, but maybe in my words, and that's going to be a lot easier to then recall. So we probably went on that just a little bit there, Steph. But can we talk a little bit about your new role within Golf Australia? So, I don't know if we want to call it that you've sort of finished up playing, but you've definitely sort of transitioning into that next, I guess, little
thing
period in your life.
Yeah.
So I think you've been traveling quite a bit with some of these players. I think we'll start with, I know you've caddied for Cassie Porter on what we call it, the Epson Tour now a little bit this year, and I think it was probably about a month ago she managed to have a win, which you were on the bag for. Do you want to tell us a little bit about, I guess, that event and caddying for her, and then we'll jump into your role within Golf Australia and what you're sort of doing there.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely like never really. I feel like I can call myself. I mean, I did feel a bit of a super looper after that week, but no, it was so cool. I caddied for Cass actually for the first time at the end of last year in the last 2 events, and I'd met Cass probably when she was like, a few years ago. She was a teenager. She was maybe like 16, and I'll never forget it. It was at Dubbo Golf Club. I don't think she even remembers it, and I give her a hard time for not remembering me, but that's okay. I definitely remembered her, and I just walked off the course, and I was like, this girl, like, I don't even remember her golf, to be honest, but I was like, I have not met a 16-year-old that like speaks so well and engages in conversation with you, like literally looks you in the eye and actually converses with you. You're not just like one word. She just blew me away, like as a person. And next thing you know, yeah, fast forward a few years, and yeah, in this role that I'm doing with Golf Australia, it's given me the opportunity to go out to tournaments with her. And since she was only the one of the only rookie pros in the Golf Australia High Performance Program, I was able to, you know, sort of full like dedicate my time to her, solely to her. So I jumped on the bag for a couple of weeks at the end of last year. First week was a little tough. It was like it's probably the toughest golf course on the Epson Tour. And then the following week was a really good week. I think she finished like top 10 or something. So, you know, she's great. You know, the secret to being a good caddy is just like make sure you pick a good player, honestly. But yeah, no. So she came back to the States this year, Epson Tour. You know, last year was a great year for her, Atlanta lot. She did well, but obviously didn't get her LPGA card. So she comes back this year and she starts off hot. First tournament of the year, finishes third. With one of our other Golf Australia high performance staff, Dwayne Smith, who some of you may know is the husband of Sarah Jane Smith and longtime caddy. So I had massive shoes to fill because I was on the bag the next 2 weeks. Following week was all right. You know, made the cut. Wasn't the best week, but it was fine. Next week, just crazy weather conditions. And yeah, we didn't get to play the last day, but still it was a great grind up until, you know, the last hole. And, you know, I come back, she's had her coach over in the meantime. I actually caddied again in California and Arizona a couple times. Didn't have the greatest weeks there, and I thought, oh, you know, my caddying days are probably over. No, but we just, you know, like no matter the result, we've always had a great time. And yeah, so I was sort of scheduled in to caddy for her at Battle Creek, Michigan, which may have been selected on my behalf because of my host family, my billets. Bruce and Wendy, you know, you got the lake on one side and the golf course on the other side. It's truly just like the best place ever. I'd introduced Bruce and Wendy to Cass last year, and Cass stayed with them last year. So we all, like, you know, everyone knew each other. So when we get there this year, and it was just, you know, like one happy family, and it was just a massive reunion for myself, and just so cool to be back. And, you know, it was just one of those perfect weeks. Everything sort of fell into place, and, you know, Cass is a great player. Like she's just so good, and it wasn't a shock or wasn't surprising that she won, you know, but it was just so cool that like she did it. She got it done. And to be there and involved and, you know, like to be a part of it was just so cool. Like, you know, obviously, you know, I've lived my own golf career and I never got to experience, you know, winning an actual like a proper professional event on tour. And so like, yeah, this was like just the coolest thing ever. And having built up this relationship with Cass and becoming like, you know, good mates, it was just so special. And yeah, we had a great chat at the start of the week, and we sort of, you know, because I was still learning up, you know, even though I've played for so many years, like I'm not a professional caddy. Like there was a bunch. It's crazy, like the role reversal in your head, you know. I never really passed to the head cover, which was good, but there's, you know, just little things where I'm like, oh, I really need to like sort of, you know, do that or do this. And I think also, to be honest, like I never really got to have too many professional caddies myself, because playing on the Epson Tour, like it's so hard to justify paying for a professional caddy, like with the budget that you're on. And I did have a few like in my time, but yeah, it was, you know, definitely I've had to learn a lot to caddy a certain, you know, up to a certain level.
How do you
But
find that role, like putting on the caddy bib and sort of, I mean, I've always felt in just like a couple of sort of, let's say, like state teams and that sort of thing that I've been the coach of and been able to sort of caddy for some of the players. It's like I just find it so different, and you're just like that super positive. Like you see the best in every single situation. It's like,
yeah,
that's fine. It's out of bounds. Like we can recover from this. And you just think like if you were the player at that time, it's just like you'd be, you know, my whole world's just felt falling apart. But
yeah.
I always find you can see that positive in the situation. I almost think sometimes it can actually help you to become a better player as well.
Oh, 100%. I feel like even now, even more so now, I will tell players like you've just got to be your best mate out there. Like pretend that you're talking to someone else, like you're caddying for someone else, because honestly, that is how you should be talking to yourself. I mean, I know everyone's different. So like I've sort of learned what works for Cass and what doesn't, or what her preferences are. And so that's definitely a part of like to the role and who you're caddying for and stuff. But like, yeah, and a general rule of thumb, like you say, you almost like treat yourself better the next time you go out and play, because you're just like, well, like, what is the point of being a negative Nancy? You know, like there's just nothing to it. So like, let's just move on. I mean, that's what you would tell your player if you're caddying for them, and you know, you just that shot's gone, and you got to be, you know, give yourself the best chance to hit the next shot as well as you can.
Yeah, absolutely. And pretty cool that it wasn't just like that week that you caddied, that there was obviously a bit of a backstory and a lead up to that. And I guess before we continue on the Golf Australia role, just while we're on the caddy side of things, a few weeks ago now, I, you know, was just scrolling my Instagram. I probably hadn't spoken to you for a couple of weeks. Now, anyone that knows me golf wise will know that Karrie Webb is my absolute idol. Like, I love her. I've unfortunately never had the chance to meet her before. But I, you know, scrolling on Instagram and I come across Steph's story and I just see her like videoing Karrie. It looked like she was on the golf course with her. And I know that Steph and Karrie have a nice relationship. But you managed to caddy for Karrie Webb that week, and obviously Karrie's not playing that much anymore. Can you tell us how that sort of come about and how that experience was?
Well, apparently when you win as a caddy, they're just like these requests just come left, right, and center. No, no, no. That could not be any far further from the truth. I just thought, as you know, our mutual friend Stace, she loved taking that on. But yeah, no, so it just happened to be like a couple of weeks after I had the win with Cass. It had absolutely zero relevance to it. But yeah, Karrie was just, you know, she, like you said, she has a very limited schedule nowadays. She really just sort of picks and chooses what she wants to play in. Now that she's spending sort of a bit more time in Australia and the US, she's splitting up her time. And so she really just wanted to have some tournament play before she teed it up at the British Open, which is next week actually, at St Andrews. And so she did say it was very conditional, and that she, you know, she needed to like have someone out there that she could have a good time with. And it was truly just like such an honor that she even thought of me to you know, come out there with her. And like you said, you know, I've known Karrie since, you know, sort of my last year as an amateur. I was very fortunate to win her very first Karrie Webb Series scholarship, and so that just sort of, you know, started the friendship that we have. And you know, I've obviously always looked up to her, and you know, I just remember being like, you know, 12 years old at the golf club and playing with my dad's friends, and they'll be like, "Oh, you're gonna be the next Greg Norman." And I was like, "No, I'm not. Like, I'm not. I want to be Karrie Webb. Like, duh, you know." And so, like, to think, yeah, I was just like, when she asked me, I was like, "Oh my gosh!" Like, of course, but then also slightly freaking out because I'm like, I'm not a proper caddy. Like, I will carry your bag and I'll walk down the fairways with you, but like, anyway, no, she was really cool about it. And she was like, Steph, like my main goal is literally just to enjoy being out there and just, yeah, get some tournament play under my belt before I go over to Scotland. So we did that. And yeah, we, rocked up on the Tuesday and went out for 9 holes. And of course, as the GOAT does, just has an ace, just as you do. And yeah, it was just like, there was so many cool moments. We didn't draw breath like the whole week. I actually just ended up staying at an Airbnb with her, and yeah, we just, it was just amazing. Like she has so many awesome stories, and like, yeah, it was just almost not enough time, but truly just like such an honor and a privilege because like, like you said, I still can't believe you haven't met her though. Maybe later on in the year.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe we can organize something. But yeah, no, it truly, it just like chills. Like when they announced her to the tee, you're just like, oh my gosh, like I think about it and I get chills because you're like, how have you done all of that? Like that is insane. What, like 40, it was like 41 LPGA Tour victories. Like that's not including all the others worldwide. Yeah, 7 major championships, like Halls of Fame, like just there's so many things to her name. And yeah, like getting the first time I heard like that announced, obviously like you're aware of this and I know this of her, but like just, it was actually so cool to this day. Like the fans love her. Like we had multiple people like yelling out like, go Karrie, thanks so much for coming, like you're a legend. Like it was just so cool. It was just such a cool experience. Obviously she didn't play as great as she would have liked, but I still saw so much like good stuff, and you're like, yeah, she's the GOAT. Just so good. So very, very excited for her to tee it up next week at St. Andrews. It'll be really special.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely be watching that one.
Didn't get the call up for British Open, but
next time, Steph, next time. So I guess, that kind of leads into like the role with Golf Australia, because obviously that Karrie Webb scholarship has been going for a very long time now. And we look at the players that have managed to win their spot there. And, a lot of them are winning on the LPGA Tour. And, she's just done an incredible amount for Golf Australia, for women's golf in Australia. And I guess that kind of leads me into obviously the role that Stacey Peters is doing within Golf Australia as well, really sort of looking after that pathway for female golfers, and now you as well in that role. I just think it's fantastic to have, for those players to have, a couple of, let's say you've both had some extremely successful times in your career, but also some tough times as well. And that amount of experience that you've managed to have worldwide, for then these young players coming up to be able to have those people to talk to, which I'd probably say, potentially when you were coming through, you just didn't have that. And for you both to be, on the younger side as well, so they can kind of relate a little bit more as well. How are you finding that new role, and obviously that transition from player to then, actually sort of, I guess, mentoring some of these young players coming through?
Yeah, if I'm being honest, like it feels somewhat natural to me. I don't know if it's sort of, I feel like having been out on tour for so long and having been there and sort of almost being through, I've been out there through the different eras. So like Hannah Green came through, and then Grace Kim came through, and like now I've got Cassie, and I was still playing at the time. And so I felt like I almost became like, the auntie on tour, where just I'd sort of like try and take them under my wing a little bit as much as I could, just help them where I could, or just, even talk to them. And just, I think, Aussies really do have a special bond, and sort of, even if I've never met you before, like, hey, you're an Aussie, like, let's get lunch, or like, is there anything I can do to help you? Or like, hey, do you have somewhere to stay? Like, I know this great family, and all of this stuff. And so I think it was a very natural, it feels fairly natural for me. And it's been a great transition from playing and, I guess transitioning into like the working world. It's crazy that it is work because, it's just, it's so fun, and it's, the next best thing to doing it yourself, just to be a little part of, someone's journey, and trying to make a positive influence and impact on them. But yeah, it's I've been wearing a few different hats, I would say. I think, huge credit to Golf Australia for even creating this space for females. Stacey Peters, obviously, you could not, like you said, you could not get a better person or a more perfect fit for this role than Stacey Peters. Like you and I know, mutual friend of ours, just like, she's just amazing. And just the fact that Golf Australia, created this space for Stace, for myself, and now, they're really prioritizing, females, I guess, in the workplace and in the high performance section, more like specifically, which, like you mentioned, is again, we just didn't have that, 15 years ago, 10, 15 years ago. And yeah, just to think back, I try not to do it too much, but I do often feel like saying, gosh, do you guys know how lucky you are? Like,
Yeah.
like back in my day, like never would I thought I'd be the one to say, or to even have things to say to like refer to that. It's crazy, but it's truly like they've made just leaps and bounds. I mean, it's so evident in the players that have come through, the girls winning, Hannah winning major championships, Minji, like all these girls who have come through. They've been Karrie Webb scholarship holders. They've gone through the high performance program. They've, been a Golf Australia rookie, where they've been supported with funding. And it's just like, it's so cool to see that, the results that they've had. And we're just, creating more and more space for people like myself. And I think it's just going to continue to get stronger. And yeah, I'm loving it. I think, couldn't speak higher of Stace, and she's truly been like the pivotal point in this sort of like next generation of female golfers in Australia. So I feel very fortunate to have her, to look up to, and sort of bounce off ideas and sort of just talk through what we can do. And we're constantly like in any profession, you're just trying to be better. And it's very exciting to be in this space for sure.
Yeah, definitely invested in the process for sure. And I think when we can see the rewards, you mentioned Hannah Green, Minji Lee, Gabby Ruffles, Steph Kiriakou, like Grace Kemp, like there's just, it's not just one or two Aussies anymore doing well. It's like, oh, there's another Aussie at the top. There's another Aussie. And it just shows that, when I spoke to Adrian, we talked about, the long journey, and it's very easy to say, oh, okay, this player's doing well this week. But it's like, look back 10 years ago where they were. Like, it's been a journey that long. And obviously this position that Stace has been in, and now yourself, is that this is part of it. This is the reason that Australia is doing so well now, especially in the women's golf space, because of this. And it's a true credit to Golf Australia. And, I just hope it continues and continues to grow. I just think you've got a wealth of knowledge and experience to be able to help these players in many different ways. And obviously we know that Australia is so far away from America and the UK and Europe and that sort of thing. And to have you based in the US, that, hey, this person needs someone, they need someone familiar, and for you to just be able to go, yep, I can be there sort of in a couple of hours. And, that's just amazing. I know that, there's probably lots of Aussies over there helping, but I know Luke Mackey's been over there for a number of years. And just having that, you always see those photos of like a big group of Aussies together, and it's like, it is that family sticking together. And I think it's a huge reason why Australia's doing so well.
100%. I mean, the Golf Australia house in Orlando in Florida, it's a couple of hours drive from where I am, but that's just been a huge success. And they've recently just got the keys to an apartment in the UK. And I was just there a couple of weeks ago setting it all up. And I just think like, this is just so awesome. I mean, if I wasn't marrying an American, I'd probably put my hand up to look after the house over there. But yeah, no, it's honestly just so cool what they're doing, and they're really prioritizing the right things. And I think well-being is basically the main space that we're focused on in my role, and it truly is like, I would say I'd say nowadays there's a lot more attention toward it, because it's evident that that's the crux of like being able to perform at a high level. And so yeah, it's really cool to see that they're they've got doing all the things to just help these athletes as much as possible. And just to what you were saying, like, there was so many times, so many years, I would say, that I was literally the only Aussie on the Epson Tour, or, one of a handful of Aussies on the European Tour. But for sure, Epson Tour, there was several years that I was the only Aussie. And to think that now, I think this year we've had multiple events where there's been nine Aussies on the LPGA Tour. Like, that is unheard of.
It's crazy,
like,
isn't it?
So freaking cool.
Yeah, it's actually amazing. And obviously the opportunities and, resources that the players have been given creates the best opportunity for them to succeed and play well. And at the end of the day, that's all you can do, is create the opportunities for them. And then, hopefully. Yep, exactly that.
So you're
exactly. So you're home this week. And then I believe next week you're actually heading back to LPGA Q School, not to play yourself, but to actually caddy for someone. So it'll be a bit more relaxed situation.
Yeah, for sure. I'm excited, looking forward to it. I've actually caddied for Justice a few times now, and I have witnessed some amazing golf by her. And yeah, so I'm excited. I'm obviously maybe not super excited about like the desert heat, but I know it's going to be a good week, and I'm super stoked that I could do it. I think her mum's coming over as well, so it should be a fun little week. And yeah, might get some burritos and all the California things. It'd be nice to be on the West Coast for a change.
Yeah, absolutely. Steph, you have been extremely generous with your time. I think we might split this into 2 episodes, but that's okay. We know that our conversations usually go for a very long time. Obviously, you have something very exciting yourself coming up at the end of the year, getting married. Yeah. Exciting.
Yeah.
Very excited about that. So amongst all of this, you're trying to plan a wedding as well.
Yes. And bought a house a couple of months ago. I would not recommend doing all of the things in the same year, but
you're a real adult now, aren't you?
Yeah, it's truly, it's like they call adulting, and I'm not sure if I like it or not, but no, it's actually so nice to have, your own space and all of that, and just sort of make it your own. And yeah, it's a very exciting sort of next chapter in my life. And the golf part, who knows? We never know. Now that I'm based over here and US Seniors Tour, I'm actually getting a lot closer to the eligibility age for that. So
come on, Steph.
that may be the next sort of goal, but
yeah, absolutely. Obviously, your soon-to-be husband is an absolute golf fanatic as well. So I'm sure golfers. What. Yeah, exactly. You've got no choice.
Yeah, I will be playing for the rest of my life for sure. Yeah, and I better be playing good, because I can't have him beating me all the time.
Yeah, exactly. So
I'm going to have to sign up for some lessons with you, Stingo.
Sounds good. You don't need my help, though. Steph, thank you so much. Yeah, lots of insight. I think the listeners will really enjoy some of the stories that you've been able to tell, and I guess express some of the hardships as well of being out there. It's pretty easy to look at the best players in the world and go, they're flying jets and they're doing this and that, and it's not like that for everyone. So it's the tiniest percentage, and yet you can still make an incredible living and look back. And if you look back, one day, if there's children in the future, and sort of go, wow, what a life I was, able to sort of live, and, the lessons and experiences you've been able to sort of have along the way is something that no one can ever take away from you.
I definitely feel very fortunate. It's been an unbelievable, 15 years, and I'm slowly starting to, really appreciate like all the cool things I've done, been able to do and experience. And it's just, a life unlike any other, really. And so, yeah, definitely trying to look at all the cool things that I've done, and yeah, just sort of see what's next.
Yep, absolutely. I love it. Well, thank you so much. You are going to, hopefully you've had dinner, but it's the evening over there in the US. So enjoy the rest of your night. And again, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
You're welcome. And let me know if you ever need a little co-host or a little intro episode. I'd be more than happy to talk all about you.
Yeah. Thanks, Steph. All right. See you later, Steph. Bye.
Bye.